You've got two absolute legends of the motorcycle world, with two totally different philosophies. One is all about pure Italian performance, the other is the very definition of American freedom. But what's really interesting is that both Ducati and Harley Davidson stared into the abyss. They both faced a crisis that almost wiped them off the map. This is the story of how they fought back, and in doing so, reinvented not just their companies, but the very idea of success. So, let's get into it.
Okay, so at their core, these two couldn't be more different. With Ducati, it's all about the machine. We're talking racing-inspired, high-performance, functional works of art. Harley Davidson, on the other hand, they're selling an idea. It's about cruisers, it's about touring, and it's about a lifestyle so powerful, people literally tattoo the logo on their bodies. And that fundamental difference is the key to understanding everything that comes next.
And both of them hit a massive wall. Back in 1996, Ducati was on the edge of financial collapse. I mean, they were so close to bankruptcy, it was a real question if they'd even survive. Around that same time, Harley was fighting a totally different kind of demon, a terrible reputation. Their bikes were seen as unreliable and poorly built, which is, a complete disaster for a brand built on being tough and rebellious.
So this brings us to the real question, right? Starting from these incredibly desperate places, how do they not only pull through, but actually become more successful than ever before? And, maybe even crazier, how did they do it by taking almost opposite paths?
It all starts right here, with their turnaround playbooks. Each company had to take a hard look in the mirror and completely rethink who they were and how they did things. Let's see how each one started forging their own new path.
Their very first moves set the stage for two completely different strategies. Ducati made a really radical pivot. They basically said, you know what? We're not a manufacturing company anymore. Instead, they decided to focus on what they did best: research, design, and marketing. Harley, meanwhile, did the opposite. They looked inward, fixed their quality problems, and doubled down on the die-hard customers who had stuck with them through thick and thin.
And you really can't underestimate the pressure Ducati was under. Their CEO at the time, Carlo Di Biagio, he put it bluntly. They were literally operating in the shadow of total failure. This wasn't just some small course correction, it was a do-or-die moment, and that's what justified the incredibly bold moves they were about to make.
And maybe the boldest move of them all was how Ducati decided to embrace this brand new thing that was just starting to change the world: the internet.
Okay, picture this. It's January 1st, 2000, the very first day of the new millennium. The internet bubble is at its absolute peak, and Ducati announces something that sounds completely insane. They're going to sell a brand new, limited edition motorcycle, the gorgeous MH900E, only on their website. No dealerships, no test rides. A €15,000 bike sold sight unseen. This was a wild gamble.
The company's leadership knew exactly what was on the line here. This wasn't just about selling a few bikes. It was about proving their entire digital strategy could work. It was about validating the power of their brand in a totally new arena. So, did the gamble pay off? Oh, it paid off. It paid off in 31 minutes. That's right. In just over half an hour, the entire first year's production run was completely sold out. At the time, it was the biggest internet sale in Italian history, and just a massive, massive win for their risky bet. It perfectly showed the power of their new direction.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because look at the contrast. Ducati's success gave them a new motto: produce what is already sold. They saw the internet as a direct sales channel for exclusive, high-demand products. And Harley Davidson? Their website literally told customers to get away from your computer and see the real world. They used the internet to point people back to their physical dealerships. For Harley, the web was a tool to support their traditional business, not to replace it.
And this whole difference in digital philosophy, well, it extended directly into how they built their communities. Because for both of these brands, community isn't just some marketing buzzword, it is everything.
So Ducati, they cultivated this global online community they called the Ducatisti. And this wasn't just a fan club. These guys were an active part of the company. In fact, Ducati pulled them online to help make the huge decision to get back into the World Grand Prix Championship. Harley, on the other hand, had the Harley Owners Group, or HOG. Founded way back in '83, this was a real-world tribe, a massive organization all about rallies, rides, and the brotherhood of the open road.
And this quote from Harley Davidson, well, it just says it all, doesn't it? The loyalty they command, it goes way beyond just buying a product. It's an identity. It's a tribe so committed that its members permanently mark themselves as part of it. You just can't manufacture that kind of dedication. If you take a quick peek at their customers, you can see the results of these strategies.
I mean, sure, both are male-dominated, but Harley actually attracts a slightly more diverse crowd, with 9% of their customers being female versus just 5% for Ducati. Harley riders also tend to be a bit older, with a median age of 45, and have a higher household income than Ducati's core audience of athletic guys under 30.
So we've seen how they tackled the market and their communities in totally different ways. But what about the bikes themselves? Let's take a look at how they completely reinvented the factory floor.
Remember that pivot Ducati made away from manufacturing? Well, this number shows you just how extreme it was. They outsourced a staggering 90% of their production. Ducati basically became the conductor of an orchestra, what they called a value network, of specialized suppliers who built all the components, while Ducati focused on the design, the R&D, and the final assembly.
And Harley? Yep, they took the exact opposite approach. They didn't outsource, they optimized. To fix those quality issues, they went in and radically overhauled their entire supply chain. They slashed their number of suppliers by 80%, from 4,000 down to just 800. They built deeper, more collaborative relationships with a smaller, more reliable group.
And Ducati's radical new model? Man, it worked. By using some Japanese-inspired efficiency techniques, the results were just incredible. They cut lead times in half, reduced defects, slashed production time, but most impressively, their daily output of motorcycles skyrocketed by 800%. And they did all that while keeping their staff numbers exactly the same.
And here is the perfect contrast from Harley Davidson. Their philosophy wasn't about radical, overnight change. It was about steady, generational improvement. It was about honoring the past while building a stronger future. It's just a fundamentally different way of thinking about progress and success.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway from these two amazing turnaround stories? Well, what we have are two very different roads, both leading right to the top of the industry.
This table really sums it up beautifully. Ducati zeroed in on R&D and design, used the internet for direct sales, and outsourced pretty much everything else. Harley focused on its legendary brand, its community, and quality, using the internet to support its traditional dealers and keeping production in-house. It's a performance niche versus total lifestyle dominance.
And that brings us to the most important lesson here. There is no single right way to innovate. Success can come from blowing up the old model, just like Ducati did with its digital strategy and outsourced network. Or it can come from a deep, relentless focus on your heritage and your core strengths, like Harley's commitment to quality and community. Both paths work.
Which leaves us with a fascinating final question to chew on. As we look to the future, which of these models is more durable? Is it the nimble, digitally native disruptor, or is it the untouchable brand built on decades of fierce loyalty? Which approach is going to define the great companies of the next 100 years? Now that's something to think about.